We start in Berlin, where shocking revelations about a far-right plot to overthrow the German government are at the center of discussions in Parliament this week. Following a special session on Monday, further details have now emerged about how a group linked to the so-called Reichsbürger movement allegedly planned to carry out their coup.
Germany is still in shock after last week's nationwide raids targeting far-right suspects. It now appears their network may have been wider than first thought. Members of the German Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee revealed that investigators found more than 100 letters of so-called declarations of confidentiality from people who supported the group's cause. The alleged plotters also planned to form more than 280 Homeland Security units, intended to become a new army. They were supposed to make arrests and also carry out executions. This shows how concrete the threat posed by this group really was. Now authorities are discussing potential political consequences. One hot topic is whether to tighten Germany's gun laws, already among the strictest in Europe. Intelligence agencies say the plotters had gathered a substantial number of weapons. But before making wide-ranging political changes, lawmakers want more information.
On the question of gun laws, I would like to understand exactly what kind of weapons are involved and how they attempted to procure weapons. Before we call for a tightening, we have to see if there is any problem at all in the legal framework as it is today.
Public officials deemed anti-democratic could potentially be dismissed more quickly. This comes after revelations that a former MP for the far-right AfD party was allegedly part of the plot. The former MP still had access to Parliament, and there could now be stricter rules for entering official buildings.
We want to be and to remain an open house, also for citizens. And at the same time, we have to guarantee security for all of us, also for our visitors. And this means that not just anyone can be allowed entry. But in future, there will be closer scrutiny than has perhaps been the case so far.
The plot to attack Parliament brought back memories of a failed attempt by protesters to storm the Berlin building in 2020. Authorities are now debating which measures could prevent scenes like this, and more importantly, safeguard Germany's democracy.
DW political correspondent Thomas Sparrow is following this story for us, and I asked him what new information has come to light about the far-right group's alleged plans.
Security officials, intelligence agencies have been briefing members of Parliament. In fact, I was only yesterday in Parliament reporting on that myself, and I would highlight two specific elements that have come out of those new revelations, which also give, or at least shed light on what these people were actually planning. One is the number of weapons that have been allegedly found, which was larger than previously known. We're talking here of around 100 weapons that have so far been found. And second, that the number of people involved is also larger than what was originally reported. OK, there were 25 people initially arrested, or the 27 that were members of this organization, but it has now been revealed that the group may have been much bigger. This all gives you an idea of just how big this organization was and how advanced also their plans were. At the same time, how important it was that security authorities were able to dismantle this group and carry on with their investigations.
So a bigger group than thought, stockpiling weapons. How imminent were their plans to overthrow the government?
According to authorities, those plans were very serious, and they were also at an advanced stage, especially at a local level in Germany. But they were not necessarily imminent from what we have been able to gather. In other words, they were serious, but it was not necessarily clear to what extent they would have been successful with their plans. That obviously has to do also with the fact that, as we saw in our report, there had already been a similar situation in August 2020 where protesters tried to storm the building, and that led to also consequences and discussions which may have helped at least authorities to look more closely at this Reichsbürger movement. So basically, this movement of people who do not believe in the legitimacy of the German state. So again, those plans were certainly very serious. but it is still a debated question whether those plans were also imminent. In other words, whether they would have been able to achieve what they were planning.
So let's talk briefly about those measures being discussed by lawmakers to tighten security. Do you think they are likely to be implemented?
It depends what you discuss as those possible measures. When I was talking to MPs, to members of parliament yesterday, it seemed clear they were at the initial stages of their investigations. It was yesterday and this week. It's been mostly about getting more information, about finding out more details about this alleged plan. And only afterwards some of the concrete measures will be announced. There are several measures being discussed with gun laws, also with who can get into the public buildings and so on. We saw that in our report. What exactly will be decided, that is still open. That is still part of the political debate which we're seeing in Parliament this week.
So to be determined what we'll see in terms of security measures. Thomas, what else can we expect to come next in this investigation?
Well, essentially, further discussions, further debates in Parliament as to what should be the concrete steps, because they are very controversial. So if you talk about gun laws, Germany has some of the strictest gun laws in Europe, but not everyone in Parliament believes that gun laws should be tightened even further. If you talk about access to public buildings, again, extremely controversial, because on the one hand, authorities want to make sure that it remains an open house, as MP told us, but at the same time, they want to make sure that that open house is secure. So we can certainly expect more debates on this issue. We can certainly expect as well a lot of controversy on what comes next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That is our political correspondent, Thomas Sparrow.